improving slowly, but it's improving. It's like turning a ship around. You have to work hard at it, and the improvements take place on a gradual basis, but they are working hard to do this. I'm confident of that. I spend a lot of time in my office in meetings where we look at the facts, and that doesn't change the bad experiences people still have some days, but I know that Mr. Byford and his entire team are very committed to addressing those things as well. Better on the air conditioning, better on the reliability of service, because we know millions of people literally every day rely on this to get to and from wherever they're going, work, school, or whatever.
Is there a longer-term solution here? I mean, right now it seems like it's just a patchwork to make sure everything's working, but long-term, is it just about getting new cars down there? I mean, or is there something else that...
Well, for example, on the two issues that I talked about, one is air conditioning and the other is overall reliability. The air conditioning is going to be best resolved, by having the new trains on the Bloor Danforth subway line. We put a few of the cars on there, but you don't hear complaints by and large from the Yonge University subway line about the air conditioning, because the new cars have 2 units per car. They're just more effective because they're newer. They're not as likely to break down. And so the faster we can get to the stage where we have the government funding from the other governments, together with our contribution to buy rocket trains for the Bloor Danforth line, the better. That's number one. Number two, the faster we get done the projects that again require funding, like the new signaling and so forth on the Bloor Danforth line, the more reliable we'll be able to make that service, and the fewer of these kinds of delays and the more train capacity. I mean, I saw for myself today again the crowding that is taking place on those lines, but the only solution to that is more transit. And therefore, I would suggest people should get behind the 15-year transit plan that I'm putting forward. The first time we've had a plan that has multiple projects in it, not one project at a time. And secondly, that they continue to encourage the other governments to help us fund these projects that involve signaling and other things that are going to make the system more reliable. And I will say, the other governments have been better partners recently with respect to some of the money they've been put up, but they're the ones with access to corporate and income tax and sales tax revenues, and we need more from them by way of investment if we're going to fix air conditioning units even better, and if we're going to have more reliable, more extensive service to people of Toronto. We need more support from them. This is the biggest city in Canada. It is by far the biggest transit system, one of the biggest in North America, and property taxpayers alone and fare payers at the fare box are not going to be able to afford the kind of expansion and improvement that needs to be made to keep this city moving and to make it fair.
Who this morning said that they wonder why there aren't there's not an even split of the new subway cars that were on line 1 being put on line 2, especially in the case of there are 25% of the cars that are running with air conditioning.
I think, I really would ask you to ask Mr. Byford that question, but I think what he's going to answer, because I know enough from having run a complex business, that in terms of maintenance and deployment, it is easier to deploy one kind of car on one track and one kind on the other track. And I realize that ends up perpetuating a difficult situation on Bloor Danforth commuters when it comes to something like air conditioning. But I think that if you looked at the sort of cost and complexity when it comes to moving all the trains around, of having 2 kinds of trains on each line, it is much more complicated and much more prone to having mistakes happen. But I would ask you to ask that question to Mr. Byford, and I'm sure he can provide you with what I expect will be a similar answer, but it's just instinct that tells me that's why. The key is not to sort of mix them up. The key is to get the new trains on Bloor Danforth as soon as possible. And even on that, if you start it tomorrow and had the money, there's a long lead time, as we've seen, to have those trains constructed. And so that's why we've got to get started as soon as possible.
What about the idea, a lot of people are in hot apartments this summer. What about the idea of a maximum temperature kind of bylaw, like we have the minimum temperatures?
Well, that's a huge question, because, of course, a lot of these units are privately owned, and you would then be saying, by passing such a law, that you're going to require not just the public sector accommodation that we oversee, but the private sector to make substantial investments in air conditioning. And we do it for heat because, as a matter of people could not survive in the cold weather if it weren't for the fact that there's a standard with respect to heating the buildings. I know that the hot weather poses some issues for some people with respect to medical issues, but I think it's a different kind of question, and it's a much bigger one in some respects than is the question of heating buildings in wintertime.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Bianca, what would you like to do?
She's going to take a few questions
there
up
we
here.
are.
Guys, she's just not used to you, so,
Who is?
We'll be gentle.
We'll be gentle. Yeah.
So Bianca, how was it? How was your It was really bad. It was super hot, and then we got trapped in a tunnel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that went on for a while, and it was.
About typical
It
to
was-
what you experienced?
It's as bad as I've seen it before. Like, the temperature was really good and hot. The crowd, it was very, very crowded, standing room only. Lots of people sort of looking wilted and fanning themselves and things like that.
So really, for what you were trying to prove, this is like perfect conditions.
It was absolutely perfect for what I wanted him to experience. We had to get off the train a couple of times. The train stopped in the tunnel. We didn't know what was going on. We got sort of part of an announcement. It was just great. Like, I couldn't have ordered a better day. Heat advisory. It was.
So you got your wish. You got married to come. What do you hope does come out of this event?
Well, I hope it informs any decisions that he might make going forward as it pertains to inequities in the quality of service across the system, as well as any proposed efficiencies or cuts that he might be thinking of asking the transit system to make. I don't know that I would like to see them, but we'll see. Hopefully it just gives him an idea of what it's really like on the ground. I did suggest to him perhaps that anytime he might want to make another change in service, that he just live it first before it actually goes through, but we'll see.
Yeah, but what's the type of reaction you've been getting since you've tweeted the mayor telling him to take this ride?
It's been generally pretty positive. I've had a lot of people reach out to me with questions that they might have had about, the rate of fare increase versus the rate of inflation. People telling me their personal stories about, their experiences with the heat, helping their fellow passengers with some heat-related issues, their own general frustration, not just with the heat, but also general accessibility issues on transit as well. There's always a few people that tell me that there are more important things to worry about, and, they're probably right, but this is still important.
What's your regular commute like? Where do you start off and end off? Is it a long trip for you, and is it always the same kind of conditions?
I'm always on the Bloor line, basically. That's my commute, sort of. I don't actually commute to work at all on line 1, and I do use transit for my day-to-day other activities, like to go to events and see my friends and stuff like that. So it's not just about the commute. It's really just about. I ride the system. I have a Metro Pass. I use it all the time. I'm sure there's lots of people like me.
Do you have faith that things are actually going to change after the Twitter campaign, the right with the mayor, the whole summer, what you've experienced? Do you think that things are actually going to change by next year?
By next week, no.
Next year.
By next year, I don't know. I would like to think that maybe I'll just have more people in the conversation to ask some hard questions and make some really informed demands of the TTC and the TTC board and of City Council in general. I think, these changes are going to take time, but I would hope at least that sort of the level of service will be totally different from what I've experienced this summer. That's my hope.
Some people on social media have gone as far as to call you a hero.
Oh God, no. That's really an exaggeration. I'm just a regular, warm, sweaty, disgruntled commuter. I'm just like everybody else. There are lots of real heroes out there. I think I spoke up to the point of absurdity on behalf of a lot of my fellow commuters, but I'm not a hero.
What made you speak up? Was there one particular ride or one particular week or incident that made you want to issue this challenge?
I think it kind of built up. It started with a couple days in hot cars, and I tweeted at the TTC first because I figured they would know what to do, and then I tweeted at Brad Ross, and he had a few sort of disappointing answers. I guess that things weren't going to get better sooner, and that things like the new rocket trains probably wouldn't make it to line 2 for about 10 years, and then I just sort of on a whim sent this tweet out to the mayor, and then every day there was a heat advisory following that. I just didn't stop. I just kind of brought it back up and retweeted it, and I just didn't quit. I think it was just sort of a buildup of conversations, and I finally thought, well, if the buck stops with him, let me see. I really did not expect this, so this is a weird, nice surprise.
Now, how do you feel being able to get the mayor's attention?
I'd like to think that any citizen can get the mayor's attention. I don't think that getting the mayor's attention shouldn't be anything unusual. I think if it's a big enough issue and it affects enough of the citizens, you should be able to get your mayor's ear. So, I mean, getting all of your attention is also really weird, but I think it's been great. I think I've been really lucky, and I hope some of the other riders out there talk to you guys and speak up a bit more. So.
I know the mayor's right there, but did he exclaim at any points when it was getting really, really hot, especially in that tunnel where you guys were stuck?
There were a couple moments where you looked a little uncomfortable. I packed a water bottle, so I was okay. but he did admit that we had reached sort of a critical point of, oh my gosh, and he got a taste of what it's like to sit in a tunnel and to hear that, well, what's going on, and people didn't know what was going on for a little while until sort of the announcements were coming out. So I think he got a really complete experience, I think, as far as Morning Rush.
More guys, and then the other guys back tomorrow. So. Good.
Are we okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.